To get started, I will be using 1 pound of lean ground beef, 1 cup of beef broth, around 2 to 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, and 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. I'm going to be using 3 teaspoons of tomato paste, 3 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, a 1/3 cup of chopped bell pepper, a 1/3 cup of onion chopped, and salt to taste. This is around a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So here I placed my lean ground beef in a pan, and I'm going to start browning and breaking it up. Before I get too far along, I'm also going to add my onion, bell pepper, and salt, and then just continue browning and sauteing everything in the pan. By the way, you do not have to use tri-colored bell pepper. I just had a bag of mini sweet bell pepper, and I also had some leftover green bell pepper, so I just used it. Use what you have on hand. So in goes the salt, and I'm also going to use pepper to taste. Okay, so back to school. This is the inspiration for this meal today. I'm going to be filming a complete school lunch classic meal, and I'm doing this because today is the first day of my son's homeschool. He is a first grader, so I'm going to make it a little special and do a home-cooked cafeteria school lunch style sloppy joe plate. So now that my ground beef is browned, everything's sauteed, I am going to start adding my other ingredients. By the way, you can drain the fat if you're using a high fat percentage in your ground beef, but this is like 93.7, 7% fat, so I'm really not going to drain it. Now, if you are persnickety about, any fat being in your ground beef, okay, just drain it. It's up to you. So I've just added my dried seasoning of onion powder, garlic powder, and chili powder. Now I'm going to add my 3 tablespoons of tomato paste. By the way, when I came up with this recipe, it's fairly simple, and I know ketchup and mustard aren't usual ingredients in a sloppy joe recipe, but I felt like manwiches one day, and I looked it up online and just looked at the back of the manwich container, and I just kind of went from there. So that's the reason why I'm using these ingredients. So now I've added my vinegar, and this is apple cider vinegar, but I will suggest using white distilled vinegar because it does make a difference in the taste. I did not have any, which is why I opted to use apple cider vinegar, but I will put white vinegar in the description. And also with the brown sugar. Here I added a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, but I actually think probably like 2 tablespoons would have sufficed. I found it a little bit sweeter than I like to taste my manwiches or sloppy joes, but actually everybody else really liked it. So it's up to you, but I think in the description I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. Scaling back I think would have been okay. So now I'm just going to continue mixing and combining all of these ingredients well. Okay, on to the next ingredients. I am adding my 1 cup of beef broth. Basically, I dissolved 1 teaspoon of beef bouillon by Knorr, the beef bouillon powder, into some hot water. And here is the missing ingredient that I totally forgot about earlier when I was explaining ingredients. I am going to be adding a couple tablespoons of Worchestershire, however you say it, sauce. Okay, everything is combined and mixed well. Now I'm just going to cover with a lid, lower the heat, and allow it to simmer for 15 to 20 minutes. And then after around 15-20 minutes, if there's still like a lot of liquid left, I'm just going to uncover it and let it reduce for another 5 to 10. Basically, you want a hearty sloppy joe. You don't want it too watery or liquidy. So again, the name of the game is just to slowly let the liquid evaporate and everything kind of stew and simmer together. So it has been around 15 minutes. I removed the lid. As you can see, it's not quite where I wanted. I wanted a little more reduced. So I'm just going to let it continue simmering without the lid for around 5 to 10 minutes. And here is what I ended up with. And I think this is ready. Okay, so I'm going to set my sloppy joe meat aside. And now I'm going to work on the macaroni. Here I have a box of macaroni. I think this is like 6 ounces, a 6-ounce box. And what I'm going to do is basically use the dried noodles, but I'm going to make my own cheddar sauce, and it's really easy. Again, I think this just kind of ups the ante on a boxed, mac and cheese, but there's nothing wrong with it. So here's the powder. I'm just gonna toss that aside, and I'm going to bring this water up to boil. Again, this is a 6-ounce box. I'm adding some salt to the water. Again, once I bring it up to boil, I'm just going to boil the macaroni noodles. And I'm also, you know what, I'm going to move this aside because I do want to work on the cheddar sauce. Okay, so I'm going to start boiling my noodles, and on the box it says to boil them for like 8 to 10 minutes. I'm going to boil them for around 6 and then cook them the rest of the way in my cheddar sauce later. Okay, into the pot, 1.5 tablespoons of butter. And by the way, this is just another on-the-fly recipe. You guys know how I cook, just using what I have. So I'm just going to let that melt. Now that it's melted, I am going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder, 1/4 teaspoon of paprika, and let that start to warm through in the butter. Now I am going to add 1 cup of heavy cream and let that sort of simmer and heat through. Again, I'm working with like a medium to low heat. I'm not trying to scald anything. And now I'm just going to mix everything again, and I'm just warming through the heavy cream. Next, I'm going to add 4 ounces of grated sharp cheddar cheese. Use the cheese of your choice. Mild or even white cheddar works well. Okay, the cheese is melted, everything is warmed through, so now I'm just going to let it come to a simmer. And my pasta noodles, my macaroni noodles have been boiling for 6 minutes, so I'm going to take them off the stove and drain all the pasta water and then toss it right into this pot of delicious cheddar sauce and let it continue cooking for like another 5 minutes. Okay, so 5 minutes is up and my macaroni and cheese is done. Take a look at that. So as you can see, everything reduced, it's combined well, and it is creamy and just delicious. So I'm going to set that aside and show you how I'm going to put together this lunch tray for my kiddo. Now, if this lunch tray doesn't give me school day nostalgia, I don't know what will. This is a delicious homemade school lunch inspired tray. I certainly hope you guys give it a try. I hope you like it. And to all those kids and even adults, have a great school year. Dax, it's lunchtime.